A very good morning to all our viewers and listeners. Welcome to another edition of Acfim Talks, brought to you by Alliance Finance Monitoring, the Pan-African watchdog in Africa. My name is Abel Eseru. I'm going to be today's host. Kindly, before we proceed, subscribe to all our social media platforms. If you are watching us on YouTube, subscribe, hit that subscription button. It's Acfim Uganda on YouTube. On Facebook, it's Acfim, like our Facebook page. And on Twitter, we are Acfim UG. So kindly also follow us on Twitter and those other platforms. Today, we are going to be discussing about the Democratic Republic joining East African Community. We are looking at the political and social implications of DRC joining the East African bloc. Before we proceed, I would like to give a background on this. The heads of states that sat in March 2022 approved the application by the largest country in the sub-Saharan Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, to officially join the East African Community. This comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. On the advantage side, we are looking at an addition of more than 90 million people onto the market population of the regional trading bloc. Therefore, we are likely to have, we are going to have a population of more than 270 people comprising of the East African bloc. So I think that comes as one of the biggest advantage of DRC joining the East African bloc, because they're bringing a population of over 90 million people into the market population of East Africa. But also on the other side, we know that DRC has been having a lot of security challenges in terms of there have been a lot of conflicts. There are very many rebel groups in DRC, and some people are so suspicious that the joining of DRC, won't it have an effect on the other countries, partner members who are part of the East African community? These rebels who have been dealing in the DRC Democratic Republic of Congo, can they have routes now to come and do their dealings in other countries? So all over the world today, we do know that countries are organizing themselves into regional blocs to strengthen inter-regional trading and also strengthen their own regional competitiveness. So we hope that the joining of DRC to the East African bloc, they will be able to strengthen the East African bloc and also make it so competitive and in terms of trade and other things. In this show, we are going to interrogate the pros and cons of DRC joining the East African bloc. Today, two gallant men with wealth of knowledge regarding the Great Lakes region will join us in discussing this topic. The first will be Mr. Edgar Tabaro, who holds a bachelor's degree in law from Makerere University, postgraduate diploma in legal practice from Law Development Center, and a master's from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. He's a big name attorney and one of the leading partners at Kampala law firm, Karuhanga Tabaro Associates. Edgar also has a distinguished career in academia as a law school don, who lectured in Uganda Christian University. He has made publications of over 20 publications in the peer review journal. He has litigated and prosecuted groundbreaking litigation in intellectual property and commercial laws. Edgar specializes in intellectual property, corporate law, construction law, and insolvency, energy, oil, and gas. Edgar, you're welcome to today's show.
Thank you, Mr. Eseru. It's a pleasure being with you this morning.
Thank you. We are also going to be joined by Mr. Dismas Nkunda. He's a long-time leader in Uganda civil society and the founder and executive director of Atrocities Watch Africa. Mr. Nkunda holds a Master's of Arts degree in humanitarian assistance from Tufts University, and he has previously worked as a programs officer for Africa Humanitarian Action in Uganda. In addition to his career as a journalist covering conflicts in African Great Lakes region, Mr. Nkunda features frequently as an instructor at IPR activities and programs on the African continent, and speaks at the APR alumni meeting in Arusha, Tanzania. Mr. Nkunda, I hope you have joined us. I think he's still connecting. So I will start with Mr. Edgar Tabaru. You have done some work within the East African Great Lakes region, and we have seen DRC was approved by the heads of summits on the 27th of March 2022.
29th of March.
Yeah, 29th of March 2022. What is your take on the DRC joining the East Africa, and why now?
It's actually the formal admission of the DRC into the East African community is going on right now in the city of Nairobi, and the heads of state have already arrived. So you're asking me what is my take on them
DRC,
joining?
them joining, and why have they decided to join now?
Why have they decided to join now? Now I don't know what to say and what not to say. I was part of the efforts to bring the DRC into the East African bloc. Had initial meetings with the now President Felix Antoine Chilombo Tshisekedi when he was living in exile in Belgium, Brussels in Belgium. The other person who was involved in that discussion is now the ambassador designate to Kinshasa, His Excellency Ambassador Farid Karisa. The other two persons who were involved in the discussions, one of them works for state security, and she may not be very comfortable me discussing the name very openly here. However, the other one is a gentleman called Ovid Chitsiku, a Zimbabwean-born South African-based lawyer. In our discussions at that time, President Tshisekedi was more like a pariah in Kinshasa. He lived in exile and had designs on running for president in 2018. So, he succeeded his father, the late Etienne Tshisekedi, to lead the political party that is now in power, leading the coalition in power. Our understanding of it at the time looked almost impossible. But with the patronage of President Yoweri Museveni and the ascendance of Mr. Tshisekedi to the presidency in the DRC, the discussion was mainly centered on four pillars. One, the interrelatedness of the African people. We speak similar languages. Whatever you see on this side of the border of Uganda is also what is on the other side of the border in the DRC. We share 700 kilometers of borderline, and the communities on this side are the same communities on their side. The majority of the people we know as Vakonzo live in the DRC known as Vanande. There are lures you hear in fact, the Minister for Trade, the Minister for External Trade in the DRC is a Mukonzo called Julien Paluku. We have rules on this side. We also have rules in the DRC. The Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs is a gentleman called Adu Bango. Now, Adu Bango is a very common surname in West Nile. In fact, when Adu Bango is traveling to his ancestral home in Ituri, he transits through Entebbe, comes all the way from Kinshasa to Entebbe, takes another flight to Arua, and crosses by road to his home area. The Minister for Infrastructure in the DRC is my namesake. My middle name is Muvunyi. My namesake, Muvunyi Gisaro Alexis, is Minister for Infrastructure there. So interrelatedness of the African people, the interrelatedness of Ugandan and DRC people. The second pillar was interdependence. Now, interdependence may seem an abstract idea, but interdependence simply means I rely on you, you rely on me, I depend on you, symbiotic whatever existence. And we're not really reinventing the wheel. Interdependence of the African people has gone on for millennia. The pre-colonial African trade, which is the third pillar, integration, economic integration. We've traded with another for centuries. In the pre-colonial African, in pre-colonial Africa, we had trade caravans operating in this region. Sultan Said Saidi moved his capital from Muscat, Oman, to Zanzibar to deepen trade with the hinterland. As early as 1863, was it 1863 or 1893? 1893, Gerard Porto, after whom Fort Porto is named, was the Consul General of Britain in Zanzibar. And the reason why they established a consulate there, a trade consulate there, was to trade with the rest of East Africa. So these communities were interlinked through trade. They were integrated through trade. So we had trade caravans financed by Indian Banyans. We had Afro-Arabs, we had Arabs trading from Pwani, which is the coast, through the Miombo woodlands, the Intercastrian region, which is the Great Lakes region, DRC, the Congo forests, Sudanic savanna. Now, all these communities were interlinked, were integrated through trade. Now, colonial Africa comes in, and the trade linkages are broken apart because of what was done at Berlin in 1886 rather. And they created enclave economies to feed the industries in Europe. So our understanding was that increased intra and inter-African trade would propel us to prosperity. The fourth ambit was political integration. Of course, that is something I have very little expertise over, and it has been mainly in the realm of President Museveni. He has been the major driver of political integration in this discussion. So we had those discussions, and he made assurances to us. And when he met President Museveni, that was the same assurance he made to him, that he'll fast track the joining of the East African community, of DRC in the East African community. Remember, it was also one of the major pillars for support to the ADFL, a coalition that was led by the late Laura Desili Kabila, the father of President Joseph Kabila. Now, unfortunately, when Kabila took power, when Kabila took power, he reneged on the agreement and instead joined SADC. Now, Joseph Kabila, who had issues of legitimacy because he comes from the east side of the country, he failed, or rather did not deliver on that aspect of joining the East African community. So really, this is phenomenal. And since Mr. Nkunda has joined now, I'll cede space and maybe give his contribution. I've given you the background.
Thank you so much for that background. This background will help us in the forthcoming as we continue. Mr. Nkunda, you're very welcome. As you are aware, where Edgar was giving us a background on why the discussions that the subsequent discussions that came that he participated in to ensure that DRC joins the East African community. So I want to get from you, as one of the journalists who has reported so much and also covered so much works around the Great Lakes region and also happenings in DRC. What is your take on the DRC joining the East African bloc?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. My apologies for technical problems that I had in terms of me joining this. I'm not yet savvy as Edgar, who joined on time. I think there are enough. I think I got the tail end of Edgar's background. And I think that it is very useful to know that actually it has a historical perspective to it. It's not just an event that just happened on March 7th, but that the Democratic Republic of Congo is actually more integrated within the East African, in particular its eastern part. It's more integrated within the East Africa region more than any other places that you think of. We and Edgar, we come from Kisoro. We know that part of where currently this war with M23 is essentially people who speak the same language. They They share almost everything, their relatives and in-laws. So us getting the East African community, getting the second largest country in Africa to be part of the East African community, and we can now have access to both the Atlantic and Indian Ocean, is phenomenal. Not only that, we are going to get another 90 million people joining the market of the East African community. Nothing can beat that. We are just only about 177 million people in East Africa out of the 7 nations. Now that we have added on another 90, nothing can beat that in terms of the economic progress that people are going to benefit from this. I had Edgar speak about the political federation, which Seven has always touted. And for him, I think he has been seeing this from a Pan-African lens. And I think that DRC was not going to join the East African community if it wasn't from Seven's idealism, in terms of him thinking that DRC being part of the East African community not only brings about business, but also it has something to do with a contractual obligation that these countries have in terms of defending each member state if they have issues of security that beleaguer them. And importantly for DRC, with its over 133 rebel outfits, it certainly is going to be a welcome relief that the East African countries, the rest of the East African countries, can be able to see the value of adding DRC to the region. Now, not only does it help us like that as a region in East Africa, but it also makes us rich. Remember, DRC and Tanzania are also members of the South African Development Corporation, SADC. So in other words, we have a link not only in the southern part of the continent, but we also reach now other countries that we had reached to, countries like Cameroon, countries like Gabon, Congo Republic. So there is, and Central African Republic. So there is quite a big benefit in DR Congo becoming a member of the East African community.
Yes, Mr. Disma, you're giving us a very good background in terms of the economics of how the 90 million people who are coming will boost the markets of the other East African countries, and also how these other East African countries will benefit from trading with DRC. But if you look at it from the political angle, we have seen that DRC has been undergoing a lot of struggle in terms of security. There are very many rebel groups that are harbored in DRC, and the country is not so stable politically and so insecure. Just on the same day when they were being admitted or approved, we saw some of the refugees cross to Uganda on the same day. And now that they have joined the East African community, do you think this insecurity and also the dealings of the rebel groups can be sorted out by the member states collectively?
Edgar will tell you that that attack of M23 was calculated. I'm sure that you are aware that today there is a summit taking place in Nairobi, and essentially there is some kind of political leverage that was needed for someone to sit on the table and make certain claims, given that Uganda had crossed into Democratic Republic of Congo and was gaining an upper hand in terms of what both building the roads, both securing trying to fight the ADF, etc., which made certain quarters quite uncomfortable. So to that extent, the fighting of M23, no one would have been surprised that it happened at the time that happened. And the leverage that they have gotten is that they want to be on the table in the discussions that are happening in Nairobi. But that aside, I think there is each country, if it has a problem, if Democratic Republic has a problem in terms of the rebels that are affecting its business, trust me, a country asking Kenya, asking Uganda, asking friendly countries that want to do business freely within the Democratic Republic of Congo, since now it has been admitted within the East African community, it's something that is going to be on anyone's mind and thought. If Uganda is interested in building roads, it wants to open economic activities in which its people can trade. So if then the rebels are a hindrance to that, the military cooperation that will be required to deal with those rebels, it's going to be, they have what they call the Collective Security Pact within the East African community. And I do believe that it will be the time that that one will be triggered in terms of how we deal with the various rebellions in order that people can secure the business interests that they want.
I don't know whether Edgar is on, because I also wanted to get his views on this fluid and volatile security in DRC and whether joining EAC is a milestone to the end of these political conflicts and rebel activities in DRC. So I think when he comes back, we will be able to respond to that. Edgar was just before he joined. Edgar was sharing about the reasons why it's good for us as East African or as Africans to come back to our original ways of life, because we used to live as people were interdependent among each other. We had integrated economies, and we used to relate as one people. But until the colonial masters came and divided us and made us split, created a lot of boundaries. So now we are seeing DRC has joined the East African bloc. And there are a lot of things. If you look at the 4 pillars that are guiding the East African community, number one is on customs, customs union, where there is need of countries who are part of that, the East African community, to freely trade amongst themselves. But we have seen, although this has been in place, there are some countries that have closed borders for almost 3 years. You look at the case of Uganda and Rwanda. So it seems some of these pillars are not being followed. We say this is on paper, but in actual sense, some things are not being done as per the treaty. So don't you think, even if DRC has joined, don't you think, because there are still suspicions between DRC, Uganda, and Rwanda about some of the dealings which are happening that are causing insecurity in DRC? Do you think by joining the East African community, these things will be sorted and we shall be able to trade very well with them?
The processes of okay, the East African community in the beginning was made a little bit amorphous. Started in 1967, it had problems during Idi Amin's time when it disintegrated. Then it was recreated, and then we added in countries. We added in other countries. We added in Burundi, Rwanda, and South Sudan, now DRC. That does not mean that countries don't have their own bilateral relations. In other words, they have their own internal matters which they have to deal with a neighbor, which exactly is what happened between Uganda and Rwanda. So to that extent, we cannot use the excuse of 2 countries having a problem of us thinking about a united. You are the one, Abel, who's speaking about us going, Edgar telling us that we should go back to the old ways before colonialists came and split us. I essentially, and I totally agree, because that is the way to go, given the nature in the world. If you look at the countries that or regions that are booming in economic terms, there are regions that have come back together. They have pulled their resources together. They have made their people interdependent. They have made now, which is another question that actually we haven't been able to tackle, that we have had refugees coming from DRC into Uganda. Under the East African community, essentially, we are not even supposed to be having refugees, because you can be able to live in another country or another country of the region necessarily without being tagged as a refugee. And this is actually something that we are pursuing before the East African Court of Justice. So I think there are other benefits. It does not stop bilateral relations between the different countries and intra serious problems between a country and another. But the mechanism of the East African community is supposed to be the ultimate that solves and manages such a problem when it emerges. But unfortunately, in the case of Uganda and Rwanda, even other countries that are tried, Angola, DRC, they wouldn't be able to resolve the issue. It was resolved in manners that are a little bit personal, as a Ugandan you understand.
Thank you, Edgar. Before I think you had network issues. We wanted to get your thoughts on the security in DRC that has been fluid and volatile since its independence. Does their joining of East African community come as a milestone to end the political conflict and rebel activities in DRC?
If we are going to go by history and contemporary dynamics and challenges, the joining could even escalate the conflict, depending on how you look at it. as they were admitting the DRC, as the presidents were on was it Zoom or I don't know whether they used the Teams or whichever, their online conference, the M23 were launching attacks and they overran a major trade entry route into the DRC, Bunagana. You know as well as I do that there are many big projects that are being undertaken between Uganda and the DRC through bilateral arrangements. I'm emphasizing bilateral as opposed to multilateral arrangements. And the projects are supposed to be are being undertaken between the town of Bunagana, Ruchuru, Goma, and Kisangani. And these are multi-million-dollar projects that are being undertaken. And you have an outfit that had been largely rendered ineffective, M23. Now, you have a resurgence of the same, and M23 has the hallmarks of external support, external financing, external technical, what would the word be? Technical capacity building. Now, the question arises, why? Why is it happening? What are those fissures? What are those fault lines within this East African community that are causing the resurgence of the M23? But looking at the M23 in isolation of its historical grounding would be doing a disservice and injustice to our listeners as well as viewers. DRC was, during the colonial period, run as a private estate of King Leopold, who proceeded to pillage, loot, and kill as many as 10 million people. Now, the DRC, particularly that area of the DRC, the eastern part of the DRC, is a very contested area in terms of indigenousness of the populations there. You know, and the question of indigenousness relates to the question of citizenship. Citizenship there is very critical for ownership of land. Remember, this is largely a pre-industrial society. Actually, not even largely, it's a pre-industrial society. So land is very integral to their socio-economic and by extension political what? Welfare. Now, as it were, citizenship is very contested there. The persons who speak my native language, Urufumbira, like Dismas as well, are not agreed on who is indigenous there. We have persons who are native to that area of the DRC, Kivu, South Kivu, and what is geographically called as North Kivu, but more so in political terminology there, what they call North Kivu Petit. North Kivu Petit is dominated by Kinyarwanda-speaking groups. South Kivu is as well dominated by Kinyarwanda-speaking groups. But there are many other ethnic groupings in those places. We have the Vashi, we have the Bafulero, we have the Banande, we have the who are these other? A little up, you have the Bahema, Balega, but that's more into Ituri and former Oriental province. Now, when it comes to those groups, we have immigrant populations from what is now known as modern-day Rwanda. There are those immigrants. There are those people who were in the DRC before Leopold took over. There are those people from Kinyarwanda-speaking groups that came to that area as immigrants following the opening up of mining and plantation agriculture in that area. Now, then in 1959, we have those who came as refugees. And we have another group who came in 1994 as refugees, speaking the same language but contested citizenship. And matters were not helped that during Mobutu's era, his divide and rule approach, he always played these communities against another. Now, to put it in context, having claim to citizenship in the DRC entitles you to land ownership. and further on participation in political office. Now, the DRC has traditional chiefs. The DRC has traditional chiefs who have got traditional, what do they call them? What are traditional chiefs?
Abami.
Of Sikirano. What we call a Sikirano in Uganda.
Mm.
Dismas.
My Uganda is one.
Of Sikirano, you know, inherited. Hereditary chiefs.
Hereditary, yes, hereditary.
Yeah, hereditary chiefs. We have hereditary chiefs in the DRC. Now, there are many hereditary chiefs who speak Kinyarwanda, one of them being Umwami Ndezi. Now, if you're a hereditary chief, you control territory. You know, the DRC is divided into, for local administration, it's divided into provinces, into territories, groupement, and further down you have communes. Now, territoire are traditional chiefs, hereditary chiefs, and they manage, collect taxes, and run parallel systems of administration, including issuing titles to land. Now, remember, even these traditional chiefs, historically, their boundaries were not delimited. They were not demarcated. They were not delimited, they were not demarcated. So there were always clashes, as it was here in Uganda, Bunyoro, Nkore, Toro, the disintegration of Bunyoro, the rise of Busoga, rise of Buganda. So similar history exists in the DRC. So as Uganda's, whereas we also have aspects of lost counties, they also have similar aspects of territories that are contested between ethnic groupings. Now, if you have local indigenous Banyarwanda, and you have immigrant Banyarwanda and refugee Banyarwanda also coming to claim citizenship as well as land ownership, it becomes a very, very heavily volatile matter to deal with. Now, further on, in Goma, there's an elite group, again of Kinyarwanda-speaking people, the one they call the Goma elite. They belong to a political party previously known as RCD Goma. Unfortunately, some of those formations of those parties have dissolved, the coalitions have come up, others, there's a further split. But those Goma elites speak for the rest of the community, and many times they're also divided. Now, M23 is as a result of an agreement that was reached with the namesake of Mr. Dismas Nkunda, Laurent Nkunda. I told you we have, Mr. Nkunda, before you joined, I was telling them we have namesakes across. Myself, Muvunyi, the Minister for Infrastructure is Muvunyi. I said, now we have a rebel leader called General Laurent Nkunda. His rebel outfit, CN.
My friend, be careful. That man made me get arrested twice.
Well, we shall talk about your arrest and exiling for some time at a later show. But now CNDP entered an agreement with the Kabila government on March the 23rd. The reason of the acronym M23, March the 23rd. Now, the agreement was to the effect that persons who were previously in CNDP would be posted outside their areas of birth. That's what was known as mixage. Now, a number of Kinyarwanda-speaking officers were deployed outside of the Kivus. Some of them operate in far off places like Equatorial Province, Ubangi, Watu Tere, former Oriental. Now, a number of them, like General Masunzu, General Makanika, Kanota Wimbi, which other names? Some of those big generals were absorbed in FARDC and posted elsewhere. Now, M23 is a group sponsored by external forces who do not want that area to be secure, who do not want that area to be stable. There's a peacekeeping operation there that has gone on for nearly 20 years. It has taken some 20 billion US dollars. 20 billion US dollars, half of Uganda's GDP, purportedly to keep peace in that area. Now, at the time they went there were about a dozen or so militia groups. As we talk of now, that area of the world, that area of the country has 133 militia groups controlling territories, charging revenue, and exporting minerals using external backers. So what is it? What is it that continues to elude us? And it's not the first time that we've had peacekeeping operations in the DRC. In the 60s, there was also an attempt at peacekeeping operation, but peace continues to elude that place. Now, lastly, there is a political formation that is emerging in the DRC, known as Balkanization, or what they call Balkanization in the DRC. Balkanization is being pushed by external forces to break apart DRC and some of the most mineral-rich areas like Kivu, North Kivu and South Kivu, break away to form their own republic. Now, that's a very touchy issue in the DRC, because when you talk of Balkanization, there's the area known as Katanga that has been historically opposed to belong to the rest of the DRC. In the 60s, there was a leader called Moise Tshombe, who had led a breakout of Katanga. Now, those Katanga natives are nostalgic about that, and they run their own economy, very big international airports. Lubumbashi is it's a bustling city with activity, economic, culture. They have direct flights from Europe, direct flights from South Africa. And so when Balkanization arises from the Eastern DRC, it threatens the very existence of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the issue is much deeper than we think, and I don't think this can be resolved within the East African community, because there are certain embedded forces within the East African community that are not interested in the stability of the DRC.
Yeah, that's another thing we want to touch, but we shall discuss about that after we have come back from this break, because we know that there are some interested parties within the East African community that want DRC the way it is when it's incestuous, so that they can do other dealings within the community, within DRC. So for now, we are going to go for a break, and then we shall return.